In this surah, Allah Almighty gave us an important instruction. He ordered us to face the Kaaba when performing the prayer, where previously He had commanded us to face Baitul Maqdis. In fact, Allah Almighty changed the direction of prayer Qiblah 2 times. The first time He told us to face Baitul Maqdis, and then He changed it to the Kaaba. Of course, such a change created confusion among the people of the book, not only them, but also some Muslims as well. For sure, this ayah contains great wisdoms and rulings that I will present to you inshallah. But before that, let's hear the ayah. This ayah is in Surah Al-Imran, verse 177. The meaning is, it is neither their meat nor their blood that reaches Allah, but it is the piety from you that reaches Him. It is not Birr that you turn your faces towards east and west, but Birr is the one who believes in Allah and the last day, and gives his wealth in spite of love for it, and gives them food in spite of their love for it, to the masakin, the poor, the orphan, and the captive, saying, we feed you seeking Allah's face only. We wish for no reward, nor thanks from you. In this ayah, Allah Almighty told us that there are certain things that cannot reach Him, like the slaughtering animals' meat or their blood. They cannot reach Allah. On the contrary, what reaches Allah is a person's piety and righteousness, Birr. There are 2 points I would like to raise here. First, Allah Almighty spoke about turning the face towards the east and the west in prayer, but He did not say that turning the face towards the Kaaba is a type of Birr. Rather, He mentioned other types of Birr, like giving away one's wealth, feeding the poor, the orphan, and the captive. So turning the face towards the Kaaba is not a type of Birr, but rather one of the conditions for performing the prayer. As for Birr, it is giving to the poor, the orphan, and the captive. Second, Allah Almighty told us that the thing that reaches Him is the piety from you. This means that righteous deeds cannot be attributed to Allah. Only Allah has perfection. Righteousness is attributed to us based on our intention, actions, and what we do according to Allah's ordinance. Righteousness is a quality, a description, or a status for us, not for Allah. If we attribute righteousness to Allah, we associate partners with Allah in perfection, which is shirk, and we ascribe human characteristics to Allah. Allah Almighty is perfect and the Most High. He doesn't need anything. Allah Almighty told us about Birr in many places in the Quran, like in Surah Al-Imran, verse 165, where He says, but the good deed and the bad deed cannot be equal. Chase away evil as far as you can, for it is a stinking thing. So we see that Birr has a negative counterpart, which is evil or sin. And this is why Allah Almighty said, chase away evil as far as you can. The further you distance yourself from evil, the more you will be righteous. So the opposite of Birr is evil. Similarly, in Surah Al-Imran, Allah Almighty says, and give them food in spite of their love for it, to the masakin, the poor, the orphan, and the captive, saying, we feed you seeking Allah's face only. We wish for no reward, nor thanks from you. So we see that the opposite of giving food to the poor, the orphan, and the captive is hoarding and being miserly with one's food. Thus, we see that righteousness has its opposites, which are sins, like how fear has its opposite, which is arrogance. So if you want to know what righteousness means, look at sin, and you will know. If you want to know what fear means, look at arrogance, and you will know. Why? Because the opposite shows the original meaning, because everything has a counterpart, but Allah Almighty describes the counterpart of righteousness as evil and sin. And Allah Almighty tells us that there are 2 things that cannot be equal, the good deed and the bad deed. So evil and sin cannot be equal to the good deed and righteousness. Now let's continue with the rest of the ayah. After Allah Almighty explained to us that the thing that reaches Him is our piety, and that righteousness has its opposites, Allah Almighty told us that the righteous are the people who possess these characteristics. So let's listen to these characteristics. First, Allah Almighty says, and gives them food, in spite of their love for it, to the masakin, the poor. The intended meaning is, even though they love their food and do not want to give any of it away, yet they give it to the poor. We see here that the matter of righteousness is not just theoretical knowledge. No, righteousness requires action. You may know it, believe it, and even claim to be righteous. However, Allah Almighty says, righteousness is for those who actually perform righteous acts. And this is why Allah Almighty says, and gives them food, in spite of their love for it, to the masakin, the poor. Now, who are the poor? I will tell you that later insha'Allah. Second, the orphan. Here Allah Almighty referred to the orphan as a category of people who need our support. He did not say the orphan in general, but rather the orphans, because they are usually neglected by society, especially during ancient times. There was a big problem regarding the rights of orphans, and Allah Almighty made it obligatory upon us to take care of them and protect their rights. So Allah Almighty said, and give them food, in spite of their love for it, to the masakin, the poor, the orphan. Third, and the captive. So the captives here are those who have been unjustly taken prisoner, and they have the right to be helped and freed. Fourth, saying, we feed you seeking Allah's face only. We wish for no reward nor thanks from you. So the righteous are the ones who do not seek fame or reward in this world, but only Allah's pleasure. This is why Allah Almighty told us to feed the poor, the orphan, and the captive, saying, we feed you seeking Allah's face only. We wish for no reward nor thanks from you. So the righteous are the ones who act for Allah's sake alone. They do not seek any material gain in this world, whether through thanks, rewards, fame, or anything else. No, the righteous act for Allah's sake only, and their only reward is Allah's pleasure. Fifth, Allah Almighty said, perform as salah and gives the zakah, which means that the righteous perform their prayer on time and give charity. These two characteristics are essential for every Muslim. Every Muslim must perform 5 daily prayers and give the obligatory charity known as zakah annually. Sixth, and who fulfill their covenant when they make it. These are the people who fulfill what they promise and do not break their oaths. This is a very important point that we must pay attention to. A person may promise to do something and forget about it. This is why Allah Almighty told us that the righteous are the ones who fulfill what they promise and do not break their oaths. A person may think it's a small matter, but when Allah Almighty wants to describe the righteous, He mentioned fulfilling the covenant and not breaking the oath. So we should not underestimate these matters. We must be serious about our promises and not break our oaths. Remember, Allah Almighty holds the believer accountable for every word. Seventh, and who are patient in extreme poverty and ailment. And at the time of fighting, the righteous are the ones who are patient. Patience is the key. When a person is hit with poverty, sickness, or war, patience is the solution. When a person is hit with hardship, patience is the key to success and happiness. When a person faces injustice, patience is the key to victory. The righteous are patient. We must be patient, my brothers and sisters, whenever we meet with different hardships in our lives, because patience is a sign of strength, and it leads us to Allah's pleasure. So these are the characteristics of the righteous. And Allah Almighty says, such are the people of the truth, and they are al-Muttaqin, pious, righteous, careful, and obedient. The righteous are also the pious. And Allah knows best. It is He whom help is sought from, and upon Him we rely.